Morning, brothers and sisters. So I have been thinking a lot about what I'm going to do as far as how I can continue to fight my mission. Um, which, for those of you who don't know, um, I kind of swore an oath to a friend of mine and myself when I was about 15 years old, wherein I swore to fight to liberate oppressed peoples, and I consecrated myself to the cause of democracy. Now, what that means is that I dedicated my life from a very young age um, to seeking out a way to advocate um, for others. My largest objective here in this mission is expanding the liberties for people around the world. Um, I was brought up in a fairly religious environment, and I have very strong convictions and beliefs. One of those principles is the keystone of righteous governance is consent of the governed. And so for me, it's very important that when people are subject to any type of government, they are consenting in that, right? The social contract is required between the individual and those imposing the guidance and restrictions on them. So um, I base a lot of my understanding of democracy when I talk about it on something called the Global Democracy Index that is produced by the Economist's Intelligence Unit once a year, and they go through a very large set of parameters and determine what's considered like a fairly democratic society. Even the United States, who like openly advocates for democracy as much as they can everywhere, doesn't actually meet the criteria for being what's considered a full democracy. They're considered a flawed democracy because um, of how we're functioning as a bipartisan system, instead of allowing more competition for important roles in the governing of our country. So even the United States is considered a flawed democracy. However, it's still better than not a democracy at all, right? But it's a step in the right direction. Um, what we need to do is we need to work on that within our own country, but also continue to spread our ideologies. The biggest problem that I'm seeing within our country and particularly within the armed forces, because that's kind of where I've been, is that we've lost sight as a country of who we are and what we fight for. I've been deployed multiple times and I've engaged in several missions. And the only reason that I knew what my mission actually translated to, like what my role did to perpetuate our ideals, is because I had to self-educate. So the biggest problem is that at the tactical level or down on the ground, boots on the ground, um, soldiers are so focused in on the task at hand that they lose sight of why we do what we do. And so I think that my next step in perpetuating my mission is finding a way to reach and inspire soldiers um, in a way that they will be able to understand why we fight, if that makes sense. So I'm going to try to develop a nonprofit and try to distribute like little pamphlets that talk about um, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Charter, the NATO Charter, how the United Nations Security Council mission sets translate to NATO mission sets, and how each of those things is in service to the ideologies that we believe in as a people, so that we can get back to the fighting force that we were before Vietnam, where we were a fighting force of people that believed in what our country stands for. We've spent, I mean, damn near 80 years, in these conflicts that are not necessarily directly in line with what our people believe. So what we need to do is we need to remind America what they believe in, and further that, I think we need to reevaluate what our mission is, even within the State Department and within the intelligence community. I think that we need to let go of the idea that our mission is American primacy, no matter the cost, and American primacy above all else. We need to get away from that and get into the mindset that we are here to help liberate oppressed peoples, to share the ideology of the consent of the governed being the only form of righteous governance, and to be an advocate for um, people and communities being able to have a say, a vote in who rules over them and who governs them, right? So we need to get back to that, and we need to ask ourselves, at the lowest level, how our mission contribute, like how our individual role contributes to that mission. And if we come up empty, then we need to talk to our chain of command and ask that. How does what I'm doing right now as a soldier in the United States Army actually impacting the advocacy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in all regions of the world? How is what I'm doing help solidify the foundation of um, democratic programs and policies that allow other people to have a say in who's in charge of them? Um, Per the most recent GDI, only 8% of the global population is currently capable of consenting in some way to how they're governed, right? So that's very low. What can we do to expand that number? How can we help encourage people to um, seek a way to vote in a way that's actually meaningful, right? And I'm not talking about pseudo democracies where you cast a vote and then, people behind the scenes determine that, regardless of your vote, this other person's going to be in charge, or, the regime that counts the votes is the one that already is in power. So they just keep themselves in power. I'm talking about legitimate, actual democracies. How can we keep them alive, and how can we advocate for them around the globe? Right. So I think that each person, I mean, I'm focusing in on the population of soldiers because that's my environment, right? That's my sphere of influence. But I do think that this applies to every citizen in the United States. Every American needs to get back on board with what we stand for, like what we actually believe. When's the last time you've read the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, the foundational documents and doctrines of our country, like what we believe as a people, the fibers that weave the fabric of our society are built on those documents and ideas. We need to get back to understanding them and having that fire in our hearts to advocate for them. And I think that until we do that, this country is going to be struggling, because a whole is a sum of its parts, right? And if each individual is shaky on their foundation for our society, right? Like if they're shaky on their understanding of our society, then the society is going to be shaky, right? Um, so I think that that's a big thing that we need to start advocating for. What I'm going to do is, as I go through this process and stop working, as I go through the process and I'm no longer a soldier, I intend on finding sort of like a GS job where I can work with a large number of soldiers and start distributing like little pamphlets with all of our foundational doctrines and ideologies in it. And I'm going to get printing press or whatever and just start talking about these ideas and start spreading the influence of our core values amongst my peers and each service member I have the opportunity to interact with, to try to get them to understand why they fight, why they're going downrange, and how that applies to our mission as a country, and how that applies to um, our mission as a people to help advocate for freedom around the world, right? So that's kind of my mission. Is I'm gonna get you know make up a pamphlet if it doesn't exist already with Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, UN Charter, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, NATO Charter, all that stuff, and just kind of build out a very easy to follow doctrine, or easy to follow pamphlet to distribute to soldiers, and just give it to them whenever they go to my office. And I'll work in I'll find a GS job where I get to work with a lot of soldiers and talk to them about them and try to spread this influence, right? Maybe at a MOB site for soldiers mobilizing, or division level um, human resources site where I have a lot of influence, and I'm going to go through and just try to spread that as far as I can, within my sphere of influence, and continue to make videos about the philosophies and ideologies that we stand for, why they're important, and what we can do to contribute to these missions. Right. So those are things that I'm planning on integrating. So my steps now are basically to kind of try to build you know an organization like a nonprofit or something to do all of it through, and then start seeking funds to pay for like printing of these materials, and then just distributing them and discussing them. And I'll use YouTube, but word of mouth as well, and eventually hopefully I can reach enough people that if they continue to spread it, then we can continue to spread the ideals that we stand for, and not just like, yeah, I'm here, I work, I get a paycheck, I take care of my family. And that's so much the mindset that soldiers have these days. And it leaves us kind of empty. We're soldiers without a cause, kind of like mercenaries. And that's just not what we should be, right? We should be patriots fighting for freedom. And we need to get back to that. And the only way I can see us doing that is reaching down to the lowest level and helping each person understand the core reason behind what they do. That's that's my that's my goal for the next 6 months to a year, is get that started.